think one of the most important things in life is self-advocacy. It is the first and last and middle step of any sort of transition in life, and I truly think it is the bravest thing somebody can do in practice. If you have no idea what it means, and if you clicked on this video because you're a depressed and anxious being like me, or maybe you have a loved one that is, then follow along and I'll explain it all to you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm just somebody who's been through a lot of stuff, and that's how I come up with my content. Alright, let's go. Let's start with the story of you, the bean. I'm assuming you or someone you love is going through a rough time, and chances are that rough time has been a prolonged state of being, and it feels like it will never change. And yeah, I don't think it will without the ability to form self-advocacy. Well, let's break it into parts. Self and advocacy, using something I call the B model of describing me. Let's start with this beautiful thing we call self, which can be further divided into your genes, your identity, and your environment. So genes. Your genes make you who you are without you getting to necessarily choose what they are. For example, my genes decided it would be a good idea to have narcolepsy, be prone to freckles on my face, and excessively sweat no matter what antiperspirant I choose. I've literally tried them all. I would like to be able to control these things, but the genes have decided it would be so. I can do things to manage these markers, such as taking medicine for my narcolepsy, and wearing sunscreen on my face, and wearing black t-shirts that hide sweat stains. All of these things contribute to my identity and are things I choose to do, but the underlying conditions that influence these choices ever remain the same. Which brings us to your identity. This consists of the things you choose, the way you style your hair, the music you listen to, what exactly you like on your sandwich, if you even like sandwiches. All of these parts of self constantly influence each other, but are still unique because if you found someone on the globe with the same exact conditions or genes as me, we would still end up as two different people. Our identity often has subconscious influences, which may not make it our direct choice at first, but it becomes flexible once we notice it. For example, my older brother really liked video games when we were growing up, so I liked video games because I looked up to him. But now I can play whatever video games I want and like, and those choices aren't dominated by us sharing a console. Alright, let's move on to environment. Your environment is both things you control and don't control. And that sucks sometimes, but anyway. You don't get to choose who your parents are, who your direct family is, but later in life you'll hopefully get the opportunity to choose who your friends are, what the color of your bed sheets are, where you've decided your safe spaces, and so on and so forth. There are several semi-uncontrollable influences directing our environment from how we were raised as kids. And that's the part that sucks to me. But that does bring me to my next point. Regardless of what genes you are given, what identity you choose, and the environment you are raised in, you are the only person in charge of you. Please watch until the end if this statement makes you mad. You have permission to be mad at me, by the way. You are the master of self, and therefore, you have a responsibility to yourself, to fill the gaps that were created by adversity, and although you carry this responsibility, it really isn't something you can do completely on your own. And this is where advocacy comes in. Google defines self-advocacy as the action of representing oneself or one's views or interests. I mean, I guess this definition is fine, but let's rewrite that. Advocacy. Bravely asking for something to be known, out of respect for the self, for the greater good of all beings. That is so many words, right? Should I break it down again? Okay, what does it mean to bravely ask for something to be known? Simply put, it is saying, I need something, which can be extremely difficult when trying to get out of a traumatic event or difficult situation. And not just that, but many of us are people pleasers, regardless of generation, and have been ignited with the fear of becoming a burden. Figuring out the need isn't easy either, but once you've finally said, I've had enough of this cheese, or I desperately need this cheese, this is the next step. Who do you ask? What do you ask for besides cheese? Well, sometimes you need to ask yourself, and sometimes it's people in your environment. What you need to make known is dependent on what you need to honor your authentic self. So let's go to the second part of the definition, out of respect for the self. If you're like me, you can have all the programs and definitions and titles in the world and still not really know how to define yourself And that's totally okay because we're never just one thing. So finding a need that meets us in the moment, where we are at, with who we are in that time and space, is the ticket to success. But moving on to the third part, and then I'll get to some specific examples. For the greater good of all beings. This ensures that the need isn't overglorified or turned into something selfish, because I've experienced way too many narcissists. When others witness your bravery, it inspires them to also be brave. Whatever you're making known creates peace and harmony in the long run. This can kind of get confusing, as sometimes self-advocacy can tick people off, but for the greater good, those who stick around will, and those who don't aren't meant to be in your life. Let's get to a real example. Last year I learned several people had been lying to me for a very long time. It was terrible trying to figure out truth from lie. This was my first true form of practicing self-advocacy because it had become incredibly necessary to create effective change in my life. So here's what I did, laid out in the steps of the definition I gave you. What I made known was anyone who lied to me needed to come tell me the truth face to face and apologize. Then, out of respect for the self, I learned how to make boundaries. My need was identified as needing to feel like I could trust people again. Then, for the greater good of all beings, I made a lot of people angry by voicing my needs. Some of the people changed their lives because I told them off and remained very dear friends. Others have been completely cut out of my life or they ran away. Either way, my practicing of self-advocacy had a positive effect by protecting the relationships of people that mattered most in my life, and giving people who are out of my life a new chance of hopefully righting a wrong in some other way. Here's another more simple example. Last year, I also made it known that I was really depressed and anxious. I had suddenly developed a panic disorder. So out of respect for the self, I decided to try therapy. I thankfully got matched with a good person. Because I made the effort to go to therapy, I now can spend less time gasping for air in the middle of an intersection, and more time making YouTube videos, having wonderful friends, and giving my cats love. Taking care of myself gives me more time to take care of others, and has decreased the severity of worry by the loved ones in my life. Self-advocacy is a life-changing skill. Saying, "I'm done, I need help," or "I'm ready for this," is easier said than done, but you are the only person who can say those things and begin a journey of self-love and self-respect. Now, some of you might be watching this and are thinking, what if I just can't? And that is totally valid. Some of us can't practice self-advocacy out of safety concerns. Some of us haven't had enough training and need more time. Some of the most vulnerable members of our community can't be in charge of their own actions. And to that I emphasize community. You are never alone. There are so many beings on this planet, I'm so sad I won't get to meet barely any of you. There are resources out there for you somewhere, even though it is shameful how difficult they are to find. For those of you who can practice self-advocacy, remember that doing so is for the betterment of all beings, and you might be able to help somebody get out of a bad situation because of your bravery. Well, I hope you learned something, and if not, what the heck, you're a really smart cookie. If you want to talk about any of this, feel free to join me on my Feel Good Feelings streams on Thursdays at 7 p.m.-ish Central Time. If you've had any moments where you've practiced self-advocacy, please let me know down in the comments below. Sending lots of love, sweet dreams, and wholesome moments. Until next time, I hope you're not as sleepy as me. Bye.